Welcome to part 3, lecture number 3. Today we're going to be talking about what I wish my father taught me. And the topic for today is disappointments develop character. Disappointments develop character. Yeah, and in today's session, I'm going to be trying to go back and use different examples and references to explain one of the most fundamental lessons of life. And even more importantly, one of the lessons that I wished that my father taught me. But here's what's even more interesting. One of the lessons that I wish that I listened to in more detail, because I'm sure my father must have taught me this growing up. What I wish my father taught me was that disappointments are the seeds for developing character and developing success and developing the life that you want. Now, here's the reason why I think this is very important and why we all need to hear this. One of the things that we do, especially men, and I'm going to speak about men because I understand them better. Whenever you connect your sense of self-identity or self-worth or self-esteem to something on the outside or to an external result or an outcome, one of the things you've done by making that decision or choice is you set yourself up for failure. As a matter of fact, I might be bold in saying that you set yourself up to have a miserable life. And men or boys were very, very good at doing this. It's a very bad habit. Nonetheless, we tend to connect our sense of self-esteem, self-worth, self-identity with something on the outside. So for example, you might say, well, I'm a doctor. Or you might say, well, I have a net worth of a certain amount. You might say I'm financially free. You might say, well, I'm good looking. All of these are qualities that I think are attractive. They're good to have. The problem is that for most people, we tend to connect what we have or what we do with who we are. And in many cases, one of the challenges that we will always face is that change is a constant. And therefore, by connecting your self-identity, your self-worth, or your perception about life to something on the outside or to an outcome or to a result, you'll find that because change is constant, whenever something changes, which is almost inevitable that there will be change, whenever there's a change and the change is on the negative side, what you find is that your self-worth goes down, your self-identity feels as though you've been attacked, your feeling of importance goes down simply because there's been a change. Now, disappointments, in my opinion, are disguised blessings. I'm going to say that again. Disappointments are blessings that have been disguised. Now, if you walk into a supermarket, for example, and the next time you do this, I want you to just make an observation. Walk down the aisle where they sell maybe cornflakes and cereals. You notice very quickly that most of the items, products, are packaged. Now you can look at a packaging and you can think, wow, this is going to be really nice. However, once you've opened it up, you're suddenly shocked because what you thought you were going to get by looking at the packaging is quite different to what is inside. In the same way, the packaging is what we call disappointment. The gem within is opportunity. It's a blessing. It's a gift. Now, Napoleon Hill said something that I think is interesting. He said, hidden in every disappointment are the seeds of a greater or equal advantage. Meaning that one of the things we have to do is learn how to distinguish between the packaging and the product. The product is always good. The good could come in the form of a lesson. It can come in the form of an opportunity. But if you're not careful, at the moment of the experience, we label it as disappointment. So one of the things I wish that I probably learned a little bit more, or I like to use the word or the sentence I wish my father taught me, was that disappointments develop your character. Now, if you look through history, there is virtually no one that you can name that achieved a level of success that is admirable that didn't have a succession of disappointments in their lives. I didn't say one disappointment, I said a succession of disappointments. Someone once said that life is like an onion, and you peel it one layer at a time, and sometimes you cry. As you peel the onion, you cry. Now, you cannot mistake the tears for something negative. You must just see it as part of the experience. Now, by chopping up an onion or trying to make a really nice meal, sometimes you will have to put in some onion. You've got to look beyond that present moment. Now, look through history, and you tell me one person, just one, who achieved a level of notoriety, a level of success, a level of achievement, a level of admiration without going through disappointment. You can't. Now, you and I cannot achieve greatness without disappointment. As a matter of fact, disappointment is simply an indication that you are on the progress and on the journey towards your greatness. You're in the progress and in the pursuit of uncovering your greatness. So welcome disappointment. We look at someone like Thomas Edison, remarkable, failed 10,000 times. On his 10,000th failure, he was asked, when are you going to give up? When are you going to realize and accept that you failed? And he said something that I thought was unique. He said, I haven't failed. I've simply discovered another way in which it will not work. As a matter of fact, I have discovered how to make an explosive device. Because in his 10,000 attempts, he caused, as he was trying to develop the incandescent light bulb, he caused an explosion. Now, it's all about perspective. And so with disappointment, you must have the right perspective. What did he do? He didn't focus on the negative. He focused on the positive. He had a mind that was curious. And for him, it was like, wow, this is interesting. I've just discovered a way in which I can create an explosive device, as opposed to seeing the experience as a setback. Now, whether it be a setback, you must always see disappointment as a setup for you to come back. So whenever you have a disappointment, you stop and you ask yourself the question, what am I not seeing? What am I not seeing? Think about it this way. If you drive, you get into a car, there's something you must always do. And that is keep your vision, keep your sight, keep your focus in the direction that you want to travel in. The windscreen of a car is quite interesting, the way it's designed, and the shape and the size is done that way for a reason. You notice that in a car, if you're going to drive, or if you're a passenger in a car, the windscreen occupies the full width of the car. The rear mirror and the side view mirror are really that small. They're really tiny compared to the windscreen. As the driver, your attention should be in the direction that you're traveling, because direction determines destination. If you keep looking backwards, something bad is going to happen. If you keep looking to your side, something bad is going to happen. What you have to do as a driver is keep your focus in the direction that you want to travel. And that's the reason why the windscreen occupies the full width. Now, whenever you have a disappointment, you've got to see yourself as a driver, which is keep your vision, keep your focus in the direction that you want to travel. You can glance to the left, you can glance to the rear mirror or the side mirror very briefly, and then you focus. Now, in the second session, I made reference to the fact that one of the most important things you and I have to learn how to do is whenever we have a crisis or a disappointment, we must spend 95% of our energy, attention, focus, resources on solutions and not on the problem. 5% you want to look at the problem very briefly. Why? Because you want to know what the feedback is. You see, disappointments are simply feedback. The way you build character, you develop character, is through feedback. You develop your character, you develop talents, you develop your attitude, you develop your abilities by learning. Feedback. You course correct, you make a change, you improve. So disappointments, you should welcome them. Open, your heart, open your mind to receiving a disappointment. Don't expect it, but welcome them when they arrive. The reason is, in many cases, a disappointment are often, and not just one disappointment, a series of disappointments could be the universe's way or nature or life's way of trying to tell you that there's something you're missing. There's something you've ignored. There's something you haven't considered. There's something you should avoid. Or perhaps the time is not right. King Solomon said that there's a time for everything. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to sow and a time to reap or harvest. So sometimes disappointments are simply like detours, leading you towards your destination and your destiny. Think about this if you're driving, going back to the same car analogy. You get in the car and you're driving. Let's assume you're driving from here to Manchester, from London to Manchester. You get on the motorway and maybe you're doing 70 miles an hour, and then suddenly you see a sign. The sign says that there's been an accident about 400 yards. And as a result of that accident, that almost motorists are going to have to be diverted through a safer route. And unfortunately, it might add about 15 minutes extra to your journey. Now think about this. Do you suddenly throw a tantrum, get angry, get upset, put your foot on the pedal and say, no, I'm not taking the detour, I'm going in the same direction? The answer is no, because you know that the directions and the instructions are there to serve you, there to protect you. Now, if it's that simple and easy to understand, why can't we apply the same principles in our lives whenever we have disappointments? Why don't we just simply see disappointments as feedback and a detour leading us towards what we really desire? In many cases, we never fail in life. We just, like a classroom, you just retake the exam over and over again. And sometimes life will bring a disappointment into your experience because there's something you've missed. And who knows, maybe if you continued traveling without taking the detour, maybe it could lead to perhaps a loss of capital, a loss of friendship, a loss of your self-worth and self-esteem, a loss of resources, who knows, a loss of your life. So disappointments enable us to develop our character, and you should welcome it. Now, we talked about Edison, but I can give you, and I can spend the next 2 hours giving you a list of different people. Next person, let's look at Abraham Lincoln, a remarkable individual. But if you study Abraham Lincoln's life, you realize actually before he became the president that he had failed so many times in his political career. Then he lost his sweetheart, then he failed, then he went back, then he failed. Now he had failed so much that most people never anticipated that he would ever become president, or that he had what it took to even be president. Now he has a remarkable story and a remarkable life. And here's the point I'm trying to make. If he had stopped after the first disappointment, if he had said, you know what, I'm not good enough, do you know that actually we never would have had the emancipation of slavery in the United States? If he had stopped and said, you know what, I'm not good enough, this is an indication that I'm not worth it, I'm not deserving of serving my people, we wouldn't have had one of the most respected and the most celebrated presidents and individuals who ever lived. Now, we look at someone else. I love Michael Jordan because he had a remarkable career. And he said something that when I heard it the first time, I thought, wow, this just explains the whole principle of how you should see disappointments. Now, I may not be able to say it the way he did, but I'll give it a go. He said something to the lines, and I paraphrase, that he had failed over and over and over and over again in his career, and that's why he succeeded. I think he said something like, I've played over, I think, 600 games. I've lost over 30 games. He made a statement that said that I've been entrusted to take the game-winning shot 26 times. Now, think about this. You've played a game and it's come down to just one shot. Now, you're the best player, and they say, listen, Michael, if you get this, we win. 26 times he has been entrusted to take the game-winning shot, and he missed. And then he said at the end, he said, I failed over and over and over again, and that is why I succeed. It's beautiful. The point is, it's all about perspective. We have Colonel Sanders, who was the founder of KFC. His journey and his experience is quite refreshing and admirable, because here is this guy who has a restaurant, realizes just as he was about to retire that they were going to have some traffic interface going through his the location where he had his restaurant, and so he couldn't continue his business. Now, he could have simply said, everything is over. I'm just going to pack up and retire. But no, he had an idea, he had a dream, he had a recipe. He took to the road and he traveled from city to city, from restaurant to restaurant, trying to sell a concept, trying to sell a dream. And he got rejected and rejected and rejected. Now, he accumulated. Now, I use the word accumulate simply just to put it in perspective, but he accumulated 1,009 rejections before he had his first yes. So imagine this. You wake up in the morning, you go into a shop and you say, I have something to sell, and they say no. You go to the next place, they say no. The next place, they say no. Now, here is the question. How many rejections could you handle? Now, be honest with yourself. And put things in perspective now. How many rejections could you handle before you say, enough is enough is enough? Could you do up to 1,000? Could you do up to 10,000 like Edison? Are you that passionate about what you want to become, or who you want to become rather? Are you that passionate about what you want to have, that you would say, it doesn't matter how many rejections I get, it doesn't matter how many obstacles I come across, I will not stop. Disappointments need to be put in their context. Someone once said that in life that you're going to have problems and problems and problems. Like the waves of the ocean, there's problems, problems, problems. And then you're going to have the occasional crisis. So that your life is going to be a combination of problems, 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 and then crisis, and problems, problems, crisis. Now here is the question. Do you have what it takes to welcome the experience? I always say, welcome every experience, because you never know which of those experiences is going to define who you become. The forging and the development of character takes discipline. It takes sacrifice. It takes having the right perspective. It requires more than anything having a positive attitude. It requires you being willing to be patient, being willing to go through the fire. We usually say, can you go through the fire? Winston Churchill said that if you find yourself going through hell, he said, don't stop, keep going. And that's how you must address and see disappointment. So my father taught me a lot of things. And at the young age, we modeled, we saw how he lived. We saw how he interacted with other people. We saw how, from his actions, what he believed in. And so we modeled a lot of what we saw. Now, being a young child and having left home relatively young, in pursuit of my dreams, I found that I missed out on that repetitious reinforcement of the importance of having a good character, and actually the importance of welcoming failure and seeing failure as the stepping stone towards success. And so later on in my life, in my late teens, probably early 20s, I found that actually I started getting a little bit overwhelmed with trying something and not succeeding. Now, one of the things I had to learn to do was try and understand how to overcome the emotional the emotional drain whenever I experienced a failure. Now, in pursuit of any dream, I'll say this: when you pursue any dream, it's never a straight line. Now, I know people say that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, but life doesn't present it to you that way. You know, it's going to be a zig and zag, and you're going to zig. Sometimes you're going to zig before you zag. Sometimes it's 1 step forward, 4 steps backwards. What you have to do is learn how to dance with life. And that is the beauty of life. That's where joy and excitement and adventure comes in. Because you have to see your life and see life like a jungle. And just having the picture of life as a jungle means that you see life as an adventure. And it means as you begin the journey of life, the first thing you want to do is ask yourself, do I want to journey alone? The answer is always, if you can afford not to, perhaps you shouldn't. And the key thing is actually to identify people that have similar desires, similar goals and ambitions, who want to journey from where they are, which is where you are, to the other side of the jungle, because maybe there's the expectation of a better life. And you want to get along with these people and journey together with them. As you move along, what you find is that there's some snakes and there's some mosquitoes in the jungle, and you get to a point where you see some very clean water. You might see maybe crocodiles, you might see a beautiful rainbow, you might see waterfalls, but you have to experience the process and enjoy the process. So you have to welcome disappointments in your life if you're going to achieve whatever you want to achieve. But more importantly, depending on who you are and depending on where you are from, and I mean that in terms of how you've been raised and the beliefs that you have, some beliefs see disappointments as signals that say, be careful, or signals that say, it's not meant to be. Some other beliefs see disappointments as lessons, detours, and feedback. Some beliefs view life as suffering, and therefore disappointment part of life. That you go through it, you learn from it, you overcome it, you share the experience, you improve yourself, and you come out victorious. The best gift I can give you, and I wish I had received this gift quite early, is always ask yourself one question. What do I believe in? And is my belief system favorable towards the achievement of my goal? Is my belief system helping me, or is it hindering me? Is my belief system positive, or is it negative? You and I can always choose what we believe in. We can drop a belief system and reach for another one. If you find that your belief system is disempowering, then you have to learn how to let go and reach for something more empowering. And so, irrespective of what belief system you have, here is what I genuinely think could help. And I wish I got this quite early, because there were so many things that I pursued quite early where after failing about 10 or 15 times, I said, you know what, perhaps this is not for me. Now, in hindsight, I have some regret. I wouldn't use the word regret. I wish I had tried a little bit harder. And so my life today is quite interesting from the perspective that if I can see it in my mind's eye, if I can dream it, I'll go for it. Now, I met someone yesterday, and I asked him a question, and he was talking about his hopes. And I said to him, after he described what he was trying to achieve, I said to him, have you captured your hopes in written form? And he said, no. He said, it's all in my head. I said, that's great. I said, but you see, the bluntest pencil or pen is sharper and better than the quickest mind. I said, we have about 50 to 70,000 thoughts every day go into our mind. And one of the things you have to do is learn to control the quality of your thoughts. I said, what you should do is sit down, get a piece of paper and a pen, and capture in writing this your hope. Because by doing that, what you do, you crystallize it in written form. It becomes a goal. I said, you have to give it a timeline. So you can't just say, I hope. No. You've got to say, I want to achieve this goal by. So you have to make it measurable. I said, give it a timeline. So it's measurable, but make it realistic, but not too realistic that you don't stretch. I said, because what you want to do is you want to create disappointments. And he looked at me very worried. I said, what you want to do is, when you've decided on the goal, what you might find is that the goal may have been selected because you believe it's achievable. I said, what you want to do is push the goal a little bit further, but not too far that you lose hope, but not too near that you lose motivation and inspiration. I said, just put it a little bit far. Reason being that you start asking yourself, how am I going to achieve this goal? And more importantly, you increase the probability of failure and of being disappointed. I said, by doing that, it becomes a goal. It's in written form. It's been crystallized. You have a timeline. It's specific. It's measurable. It's achievable. Maybe you might have to stretch, but it's achievable. I said, by doing that, what you then have is a goal. I said, next, what you must do is you must take that goal in written form, and I said, convert it into pictures. Convert it into a picture, a form of a picture. I said, go online, research, find something that reminds you of that goal. And I said, you want to look at that picture every day. When you wake up in the morning, first thing in the morning if you can. More importantly, before you go to sleep. You look at the goal on the picture and you go to the end in your imagination. You assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You get up to an emotional state where you are convinced that you've already achieved the goal. You see, there's no time and space in this universe under the laws of the universe and under what we call infinite intelligence. There's no time and space. So for example, when you write the goal, you don't say, I will become, you say, I am, because you're claiming the goal right now in the present. I said, you look at the goal before you sleep. You get emotionally involved with the goal. In your mind, you close your eyes or you keep your eyes open, whichever you prefer, and you imagine the feeling of the wish fulfilled. In other words, you apply what we call the law of assumption. You assume that you have already achieved the goal. And the question you ask yourself is, what would it feel like? What will I be doing? What will I see? Who will I be around? And what will the people around me say? I said, when you fill yourself up with that feeling, then you can sleep. And he said, why? So why should I do all of this? I said, the reason is because you're going to have detours. And life is going to come at you fast. And you're going to have setbacks and obstacles. I said the biggest challenge that we face is that we lack inspiration. And if you can stay inspired, there's almost nothing that you can't achieve. If you can stay inspired, I said all of what I'm asking you to do is to find a way to re-stimulate yourself. Because when you look at your goal in written form, or when you look at your goal in pictorial form, one of three things happens. Your inspiration is reaffirmed. You have hope. Now, you cannot have faith without hope. Hope comes before faith. Now, faith is loyalty an agreement with what is unseen in your mind. So when you say I have faith, faith is not by speaking and saying. No. Faith is simply saying, I've seen it. And because I can see it in my mind's eye, I can hold it in my hands. I can have it. Faith is agreeing or agreement with the unseen. And if you can develop hope, faith, inspiration, you find that motivation comes easily. And therefore, as you go through life, I said to him, when the obstacles come, you simply say, I'm on my way. Whenever the obstacle comes and sets you back, you simply say, that's okay. I've seen it. I'm going to the promised land. I'm going there. I'm not going to stop. I've seen it in my mind's eye. So all of what's happening right now, the disappointments and the setbacks and the failure, is all part of the journey. And do you know what you would actually do? You even start documenting the disappointment, because you know that someday, with certainty, you're going to tell your story. And you're going to tell your story in such a way that it will inspire other people to realize that disappointment is really what builds your character. Now imagine this. Albert Einstein was and is considered to be one of the greatest minds who ever lived. But if I told you that in Zurich, that he failed the exam that he needed to get into the Polytechnic, would you believe it? As a matter of fact, he was considered to be not smart. He was considered not to be any good. But today, we know him as one of the greatest minds who ever lived. Now, the only way he could have achieved that was because he could see something in his mind that other people couldn't see. And here's what's interesting. Whenever we have a disappointment, many a times we lose hope because we're worried about what other people might think about the fact that we haven't achieved the goal. What a sad experience. What a sad experience. The fact that we would allow other people's opinions affect, influence our dreams and goals and how we feel. Now, what's his name? I think it's William Shakespeare, who said that nothing is either good or bad, but your thinking makes it so. And this is important. I'm going to say that again. Nothing is either good or bad, but your thinking makes it so. This simply means that to one person, a disappointment means it's over. To another person,